Welcome to the Deep Dive. You know that moment when you're watching a movie in English or listening to a podcast and you understand pretty much everything? Maybe you even follow conversations without too much trouble. But then, when it's your turn to speak, it's like your brain hits a wall and the words just won't come out.
Yeah, that freeze. It's incredibly common.
That's what we're tackling today. You've shared some really interesting stuff with us, discussions from the Beyond the Mic podcast, its YouTube transcript, and a report that pulls in insights from everywhere, from medical research to language learning blogs and online communities.
Right, a real mix of sources.
So our mission is to figure out why this happens and hopefully give you some real actionable ways to finally break through that speaking barrier.
It's fascinating how many English learners experience this exact frustration. And, as our sources point out, the fact that you understand so much already is a massive step forward. It really is.
That's a good point.
Think of your understanding as, say, the engine of a car, but speaking is the steering wheel. You can have a powerful engine, right? But without practicing how to steer, you'll just stay parked.
Good analogy.
The real trick is getting that knowledge, that engine power, into gear and onto the road.
Okay, so let's really dig into why this understanding but not speaking thing is such a common hurdle. One of the big ideas that keeps popping up in our sources is this: input versus output imbalance. Basically, your brain has been doing all this work taking in English listening, reading, that's the input. But it hasn't had the same kind of workout actually producing the language that's the output of speaking.
Exactly. One of the hosts on Beyond the Mic had a brilliant way of putting it. It's like learning to play the piano.
Okay.
You can listen to incredible musicians for years. You can understand the theory, maybe even read the music. But that doesn't suddenly mean you can sit down and play a concerto flawlessly. Speaking is a performance skill. It requires its own dedicated practice and training.
Right. It's like speaking uses a different set of language muscles, as one of the reports called them.
Yeah, exactly.
And like any muscles, they need regular exercise to get stronger. Now, one of the biggest things that can cramp those muscles up is the habit of constantly translating everything in your head from your native language before you say it in English.
Oh, that's such a key point. Trying to think in your first language and then translate it word for word into English is, well, it's like trying to navigate with a really outdated map.
Right.
It slows you down, makes you sound stiff and unnatural, and often leads to getting lost in translation. The folks at Beyond the Mic really hit the nail on the head, calling it a major obstacle, a huge roadblock.
So if all this translating is like trying to run with ankle weights, what's the more agile approach?
Well, a core insight from all the material is the need to start thinking directly in English.
Yes.
It sounds simple, maybe, but it's about making English your go-to mental language. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's about shifting from seeing English as a code you have to constantly decipher and then re-encode. The goal is to build a mental toolkit of English phrases and thought patterns that pop into your head automatically without needing that middle step of translation, internalizing it.
That's like our sources keep saying. Speaking is an active sport, like swimming or riding a bike. You can read all the instruction manuals you want, but you won't learn until you actually jump in the water or get on the saddle. If you've mostly focused on reading and listening, you've essentially become a really good observer of the game, but you haven't actually gotten in there to play.
Yeah, you've trained your brain to understand, not necessarily to speak.
And honestly, just not enough speaking practice is a huge reason why you might feel stuck.
This raises a really important question for you, the listener. When you look at how you spend your time learning English, how much of it is actively speaking compared to reading or listening? Often that imbalance is the core of the challenge. It really is.
Now, let's talk about something else that can really freeze us up. Fear and our own mindset. So many of our sources touch on this. The fear of making mistakes, the worry about being judged, and that annoying inner critic that loves to chime in the second we try to speak.
Ugh, the inner critic. Yeah. The Beyond the Mic conversations address this really well, talking about what they call the perfect sentence trap.
The perfect sentence trap. I like that.
It's that idea that everything you say has to be grammatically flawless and perfectly articulated before you even open your mouth. It's crippling.
And then there's the fear of judgment, that worry that people might laugh at your accent or your mistakes.
Yeah, definitely.
But here's a really encouraging takeaway that keeps coming up. The fact that you understand as much English as you do already means you've won a huge part of the battle. Some sources even suggest around 70%.
Wow, 70%. That's significant.
You build this incredible foundation, And now it's just about building up the speaking part.
What's fascinating is how consistent the message is across all these different sources. Mistakes aren't failures. They are an absolutely essential part of learning. Think of them as little breadcrumbs that lead you to fluency.
Yeah, like clues.
Exactly. Even native speakers mess up sometimes. We all do. It's all about changing how you see those errors.
Exactly. Our sources really encourage you to reframe your thinking about mistakes. Don't see them as something to be ashamed of, but as valuable feedback, a map that shows you where you need to grow.
A map to fluency, yeah.
Instead of aiming for some impossible perfection right away, the focus should be on being understood. If you can get your message across, that's a major win. Focus on good enough.
And it's so important to be kind to yourself throughout this process. That fear of judgment we talked about, it's often way, way louder in your own head than it is in reality. People are usually much more patient than we think.
That's true.
Give yourself permission to stumble, to use the wrong words. Sometimes it's just like a baby learning to walk. There are going to be tumbles. You have to give yourself permission to mess up.
And make sure you celebrate every time you do put yourself out there and try to speak, no matter how clunky it might feel. Remember, becoming fluent takes time and consistent effort.
Oh, yeah.
Set realistic goals for yourself and really acknowledge those small victories to keep your motivation up. Building that mental toughness, that resilience, that ability to bounce back when you feel frustrated is absolutely key.
And perhaps the most empowering thing you can do is to really define what fluency means for you.
Right, it's personal.
Exactly. Is it being able to chat casually with friends, delivering presentations at work, understanding complex instructions, having a clear picture of your personal fluency goals can help you focus your efforts and track your progress more effectively. Focus on those small wins.
All right, so we've looked at the why behind this speaking block. Now let's get into the how, the practical techniques, the hacks you can start using right away to unlock your speaking voice. One method that's highlighted in pretty much all our sources is the parrot method, or what's often called shadowing.
Shadowing, yes. It's powerful. What makes shadowing so effective is that it's like a real-time workout for your voice and your pronunciation. You're not just passively listening, you're actively trying to imitate the sounds, the rhythm, the intonation.
Even the little ums and ahs.
Yeah, even those, all the little details. It helps you get comfortable with the natural flow of spoken English.
Exactly. You listen to short bits of audio, maybe from movies, TV shows, podcasts, whatever you enjoy, and you try to repeat exactly what you hear, paying super close attention to how the words sound together, the rise and fall of the speaker's voice, the emphasis, the tone.
The trick is to choose something you genuinely enjoy so it doesn't feel like a chore. And start small.
Right. Start with really short segments, maybe just a minute or two, and really focus on copying all those little nuances.
And here's a really valuable tip from our sources. Record yourself doing the shadowing.
Ooh, brave.
I know, it can be a bit cringy at first, but it's a real eye-opener. Hearing yourself helps you identify areas where you might need to tweak your pronunciation or your flow. Choose material that challenges you a bit, but isn't so far beyond your understanding that you're just making random sounds. Needs to be understandable, but challenging.
Makes sense. Okay, another really interesting tool that keeps coming up is using AI to practice speaking.
Yes, the tech angle.
There are free platforms like ChatGPT or Speechify that you can actually have conversations with. And the beauty of it, as one of our sources points out, is that robots don't care if your grammar isn't perfect.
Yeah. No judgment there.
It's a completely judgment-free zone to just get comfortable forming sentences and getting your thoughts out loud.
This can be particularly helpful for overcoming that initial fear of speaking, can't it? Knowing that there's no human on the other end to critique you can really lower your inhibitions and allow you to focus solely on expressing yourself without that added pressure.
Then there's this fantastic technique called narrate your life. It sounds almost too simple, but it's surprisingly effective.
Tell me more.
As you go about your day, just think out loud in English about what you're doing. The beyond the mic examples was, okay, I'm washing the dishes. Ugh, the sponge smells weird. Or I'm making a cup of tea. Don't want sugar today.
I love that. It forces you to access your English vocabulary in real time for everyday situations.
Exactly. It's a brilliant way to bridge that gap between passively knowing words and actually using them spontaneously. By narrating your actions and thoughts, you're turning that passive vocabulary into active vocabulary in a very practical and low-stakes way.
Very clever.
Our sources also really emphasize the power of starting with easy wins.
Easy wins, okay.
This means focusing on mastering a small set of phrases, maybe just 10 or so, that you use all the time in your native language. Things like, excuse me, or how much does this cost, or where's the bathroom? The essential.
Right, the daily stuff.
Practice saying these simple phrases out loud until they become completely automatic, like second nature. Own them.
The idea here is to build a solid foundation of fluency in those really common everyday interactions. By earning these basic phrases, you create a sense of confidence and accomplishment that you can then build upon as you tackle more complex communication. Little confidence boosters.
And here's a really liberating idea. The messy first draft rule for speaking.
Ooh, I like the sound of that.
The core concept is to just speak first and worry about correcting any mistakes later. Think of your spoken conversations like rough drafts. You don't need to produce a perfectly polished speech every single time you open your mouth.
This directly tackles that perfect sentence trap we discussed earlier, doesn't it?
Totally.
It encourages you to prioritize getting your message across, even if it's not grammatically perfect, rather than getting stuck trying to formulate the ideal sentence before you speak a single word. Just get it out.
Speak first, fix later. We've also touched on the importance of thinking in English. And our sources really stress the need to create an immersive environment for yourself, even if you don't live in an English-speaking country.
Yeah, creating your own little English bubble.
Exactly. Surround yourself with English as much as possible. Change the language settings on your phone, listen to English music and podcasts, watch English movies and shows, read English books and articles, whatever you can do.
The more you immerse yourself in the language, the more your brain will naturally start to process and even think in English. English phrases will start popping into your head. It's about making English the default setting in as many areas of your life as you can.
Another really helpful technique mentioned is chunking.
Chunking, like breaking things down.
Precisely. This involves breaking down longer, more complex sentences into smaller, more manageable parts, or chunks. For example, instead of trying to say, I would like to order a cup of coffee, please, all at once, which can feel like a mouthful, you could break it down into I would like to, then order a cup of coffee, then please.
Ah, I see. So it reduces the mental overload.
Exactly. It makes speaking feel less overwhelming, less scary. By focusing on these smaller chunks, you can build your confidence and gradually learn to string them together into more complex and fluent sentences.
That makes a lot of sense. Less pressure.
And of course, actively building your vocabulary is crucial. But it's not enough to just memorize lists of words, right?
Right, that passive knowledge again.
You need to actively use them. Our sources suggest that when you learn a new word, try to use it in a sentence right away.
Yeah.
Say that sentence aloud and repeat it throughout the day. It's about hearing it, saying it, and really making that word your own. Speak it, hear it, own it.
This reinforces the connection between the word, its meaning, and its usage in your mind. And it helps to move that word from your passive recognition to your active speaking vocabulary. Makes it stick.
Finally, and maybe most importantly, make daily speaking practice a non-negotiable habit. Even just 5 minutes a day can make a huge difference over time.
Consistency is key, isn't it?
Absolutely. You can describe your surroundings to yourself, narrate what you're doing like we mentioned, or even just practice common conversation starters.
Yes.
You don't always need a conversation partner for these initial steps.
And to really solidify that habit, try to create an English-speaking environment wherever you can. As we've mentioned, change your device settings, engage with English content, watch, listen, repeat out loud, and even try to think in English for short periods throughout your day.
Now, for those moments when you feel like you have absolutely no time, our sources have some great ideas for quick daily drills.
Quick drills, okay. Good for busy people.
One is to create voice memo journals. Just record a 1-minute summary of your day in English.
Oh, interesting.
And then listen back to it later. It helps you track your progress and spot areas where you could improve, like pronunciation or fluency.
That's a smart way to get feedback without needing anyone else. Another fun and effective drill mentioned is caption karaoke.
Caption karaoke, how does that work?
You mute a short YouTube video and try to describe what's happening out loud as if you were doing your own live commentary.
Huh. That sounds fun, actually. Great for practicing spontaneity.
Exactly. And the one question game is another really low pressure way to get some speaking practice with other people.
Just one question.
Yep. Just aim to ask one person. It could be a friend, a shop assistant, anyone, one simple question in English each day. Like, what's your favorite season? Or what's the weather like today?
Small steps.
These small, consistent actions can really build momentum and gradually increase your comfort level and confidence when it comes to speaking English.
It's also helpful to understand a little bit about what's going on in your brain when you're learning a new language. It turns out that it actually rewires your brain.
Yeah, the neuroplasticity aspect.
It strengthens existing connections and even creates new neural pathways. It's quite amazing.
What's particularly relevant for speaking is a specific area of your brain, kind of like the language production center called Broca's area.
Broca's area, right?
Just understanding English doesn't automatically activate the center for speaking fluently. It needs its own dedicated practice and training. The brain needs to practice making the sounds and forming sentences.
It really does go back to that baking analogy you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
You might have all the ingredients, the vocabulary and grammar you understand, but you also need the recipe and the actual hands-on practice to bake the cake.
Exactly. You need both the knowledge and the skill execution practice.
To physically form the sounds and put the sentences together.
And that's precisely why consistent speaking practice, even if it's just in small doses, is so crucial. It's literally training your brain, specifically that Broca's area, to produce English more automatically and fluently.
Now, while all this individual practice is fantastic, eventually you'll want to, create real-life opportunities to speak with others. Our sources strongly encourage actively seeking out chances to communicate in English.
Absolutely. Stepping out of the comfort zone. This could mean connecting your hobbies and interests with English. For example, as one source suggested, if you love cooking, look for English language cooking classes or online communities.
Or if you're a film buff.
Right. Join an English language film discussion group. The key is to find natural contexts where you're motivated to use English to communicate about something you already enjoy. Makes it less daunting.
Language exchange apps and websites are also incredibly valuable resources, aren't they?
Definitely. They allow you to connect with native English speakers who are learning your language, creating a kind of win-win practice environment. You help them, they help you.
You can also explore online conversation groups, virtual language cafes, or even consider working with an online tutor for more structured practice.
The most important thing to remember here is don't wait until you feel perfectly fluent to start speaking with other people. That day might never come if you wait.
True. Perfection is the enemy of progress here.
Even simple interactions, like saying hello and asking how are you, are fundamental building blocks of conversation and will significantly boost your confidence. Every little bit helps.
And don't be afraid to record yourself speaking in these real-life situations. Well, when appropriate, obviously.
Yeah, maybe not secretly record your barista.
Right. But if you're practicing with a language partner, for instance, listening back can be really helpful in identifying areas where you'd like to improve your pronunciation, your smoothness of speech, your clarity.
And you can experiment, right? Play with your voice, your intonation, your speaking speed to find what feels comfortable and natural for you.
Our report also briefly touched on medical perspectives, which is interesting.
Right, the aphasia connection.
Yeah. It's worth noting that in some rare cases, the inability to speak despite understanding can be linked to medical conditions like aphasia, which sometimes result from strokes or other brain injuries.
Aphasia specifically affects the ability to produce speech, causing difficulty in finding the right words, even when comprehension is intact.
And in those situations, medical interventions like speech therapy are essential. But it's important to stress
that for the vast majority of language learners, the challenges in speaking stem from that lack of consistent practice and the anxieties around language learning, not a medical issue.
Exactly. It's usually about practice and mindset. And one really interesting and perhaps unexpected takeaway from our report is the significant emotional and social impact that the struggle can have.
It's not just about grammar.
No. Feelings of isolation, frustration, and self-consciousness are common, which really highlights that support for English learners needs to focus not only on providing practical speaking exercises, but also on building confidence and a positive mindset, addressing the whole person.
This really underscores the importance of creating a supportive and encouraging learning environment for yourself, whether that's through patient language partners, understanding friends, or just being kinder to yourself during individual practice.
So to bring it all together, the core message from everything we've looked at is this. Your ability to understand English is an incredibly strong foundation. Don't discount that.
Definitely not.
Speaking is a skill, just like any other. And with consistent practice, and the right approach, the right mindset, it's absolutely something you can develop and improve.
We really encourage you, our listener, to reflect on everything we've discussed today and choose just one or two techniques that resonated with you. Maybe shadowing, maybe narrating your life.
Yeah, just pick one to try out this week. Remember, even small, consistent actions can lead to significant progress over time. Don't feel like you have to do everything at once.
Absolutely.
And here's one final thought to leave you with. Think about those specific situations where you feel most blocked from speaking English. Is it ordering coffee, asking for directions, making small talk?
Identify that trigger point.
And then ask yourself,
Yeah.
what's one tiny step you could take this week to challenge that barrier? Maybe it really is just saying hello to a stranger in English, trying the parrot method with a short audio clip you enjoyed, or recording that brief voice memo of yourself talking about your day.
Your voice truly matters, and with consistent effort and, crucially, a positive mindset, you absolutely have the ability to bridge that gap between understanding and speaking English with greater confidence and fluency. You can do it.